think so. Welcome everyone to board meeting tonight. We appreciate seeing all of you here. We will begin tonight with a reverence by board member Nancy Kennedy, then flag salute, pledge of allegiance by board member Connie Archibald, and then recognitions by board member Julie Taylor.
Our Father in heaven, we're so very grateful for the opportunity to have meeting this evening and building a meeting to discuss goals and education and progress of our students and our children in this Boston school district. We're so grateful for the opportunity we have to live in a free country and to be able to educate our children as best we know how. And we ask that this evening as we discuss the different policies and activities and procedures that we can always put on to the best education for our children. We're grateful for our teachers and our administrators, and as this community begins, we ask that our blessings will be with them, that they can be strong, and they can enjoy the work that they are doing, and they can prepare our students for great and prosperous opportunities in life. We ask now that Spirit will be here this evening. Please help us to always look to good and the things that we can do and the things that we can do wrong, that we can help do our part to make Box Elder School District great this evening. And this we pray for in thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please stand, face the flag, and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a couple of recognitions tonight. The first one is Coach Donald Haas. He's here. Welcome. Thank you for being here. He got a really fantastic award, and let me read you what. He was named this is a national award, and he was chosen by the National High School Baseball Coaches Association as the Region 7 Coach of the Year. And that consists of Utah, Idaho, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. He's only the 4th coach from Utah to receive this award since the mid-90s. So this is a fabulous award, and I just want to read what they wrote up about him and his contributions to the program and the community, because we all know that coaches don't just coach baseball. they build character with young men, and they have a great influence on their lives and in and out of the sport and the season. So, but former Bear baseball player and assistant coach Donald Haas is entering his 15th year as the head varsity baseball coach at Bear River High School and 21st year overall within the program. He spent 6 seasons as the head JV coach under head coach Clay Chernus from 2004 to 2010, where he helped coach catchers, hitters, and a state championship team. Through 14 seasons at the helm of the Bear Ball program, Coach Haas has compiled 234 wins, 5 region championships, 5 top 5 finishes in their respective classification, 2 Region Coach of the Year honors, 2 Region Players of the Year, 15 collegiate players, 2 professional baseball players, multiple all-state and all-area players. And we just want to congratulate him and thank you for your service that you are providing, not just for the baseball program, but for the community and the schools and those students as well. So that is our first recognition tonight. We just want to congratulate you on that.
Coach Haas, if I may, would you tell us who came with you? And I'm assuming these 4 this way may be here for that too. Would you introduce your family, please?
I brought my wife, Brooke, my daughter, Cambry, my son, Chipper, and then I brought our 4 senior captains returning this year, Colton Summers, Holden Potter, Thomas Summers, and Brooke Strong.
Okay, thanks, Coach, and thanks you guys for coming, and family.
Yes. You
You guys know how much time Dad and husband gives up for what he does, and this is a cool thing that you get notice of that. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think that you don't get noticed enough on it's nice to get this big recognition, but especially family, we know what you're putting into. So you might not have the recognition in your name on this, but I believe you're just as important because that is a huge responsibility and a support. Our second recognition is the baseball team as well. So I'm glad these baseball players are here so we can honor them. The American Baseball Coaches Association recognizes an academic excellence award, Team Academic Excellence. And this is the third straight year that the Bear River High School baseball team has received this Academic Excellence Award. It's been recognized for striving for good academics. So they all, let's see, there are, I read it somewhere and I can't find where I put it. Anyhow, they have posted a grade point average of 3.0 or above as a cumulative for the whole team for the 23-24 school year, and again, third year in a row. So they're conscientious students as well as fantastic athletes. So we want to congratulate you and your team and wish you continued success in that area as well. So, and we'd love to have you come shake our hands, those of you who are here, Coach Hawes and your baseball players, but we're really proud of you and thank you for making the effort to be here.
And the family.
And the family, yes.
too, you bet. All of you.
Oh, yes, and take some
Yeah.
You
pictures,
bet.
yeah.
That would be great. Do you want to start over here on this end? Well, you got to start on this end over here, okay?
And there's a step, watch out. Don't want to lose any.
Yeah.
Yeah, then we'll do, let's walk through and then stay up here after you shake hands and then we'll get a group picture. Thanks, Catherine. Thank you, appreciate it.
Congratulations. That's great.
Great job,
Congratulations.
Thomas.
Congratulations.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Congratulations.
Love watching you play the kids parade. Congratulations. You catch.
Oh, thanks so much. Thank you. Congratulations, Coach.
Thanks
That's
for
great.
coming. Great job.
Okay, circle back around. We're gonna get a picture of everybody up front here. Let's get Coach in the middle with his family and maybe two players on each end. Have a nice balance. Thanks, guys. The good-looking ones on that end and the... No.
Okay, you guys need to squish together.
Everybody be able to see the camera. We're still going.
I'll grow taller. One more, hold on here. Squeeze in just a little bit. All right, one more. Congratulations, you guys. Yay, Bear River.
And Catherine, you can add to your resume, professional photographer.
Got it.
Thank you for coming tonight, all of you. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay. It's your call, okay? But if you want to go, that's okay too. You will not hurt our feelings.
Thomas doesn't want to stay, so his mom does all.
Thank you, Coach House.
These guys. Okay, we now need a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion. Go ahead.
Okay,
I will second that motion.
okay, so Karen Cronin made the motion and Board Member Connie Archibald the second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have our agenda for this evening. And now we will go on to our public comment. We have a couple individuals tonight for public comment. Just a guideline before we begin. Policy 1110, public participation in board meetings. Be aware of these following items. Patrons must state their name prior to making comments, first and last name. Individual comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per individual. If you're here representing a group, it can be 6 minutes. Handouts can be used. If you have any handouts, you can distribute them to the Board of Education. The board will not take final action or have discussion on any items presented during public comment. Unless the item is already on the meeting agenda, we are here to listen to you tonight. Comments on personnel issues will not be allowed during public comments. So we will begin. Our first one is it Jericho Witz? Is that correct? Oh, okay, come on up. If you can just speak right into that microphone there.
All right, I think at one point there was a timer here, so I'm just gonna have to go on the fly.
That's okay.
Oh, there it is.
Roll.
All right, so,
Okay.
hello, my name is Jericho Witz. I'm here to speak on a topic that kind of bothered me. I do substitute teach, I taught since last October. During that time, I was transitioning out of the military. And I wanted to share to you what I used to do in the military before I became a substitute teacher, to kind of give you where I literally was coming from. At some point during my career, I was a technical school instructor, so I would mentor, I would teach brand new recruits coming out basic training. And one of those things I'm tasked with is to identify, to enforce standards, of which is dress and appearance. And I think you all agree as mentors, educators, and parents that if you have students, children, coming to you and leaving your presence, they become a product of what you tolerate, what you allow, and what you find acceptable. So the one thing that I've had an issue with when I was teaching is that a lot of young ladies, I guess during the summer, are walking around showing their midriffs, showing their bellies. I think around the 1950s, that was like a taboo thing. And even the movies, they wouldn't even show it. They would show this portion, but not the belly button. But I just went with my daughter to the high school over Box Elder High School. A lot of girls are doing that. And I was able to see the evolution of women's dress just because I've been observing media and stuff like that. People are walking around town. And I could tell exactly where it came from. And I'm getting a little nervous, a little wound up, if you notice. I'm not angry or anything right now, just nervous. So it's coming from some personalities like Cardi B. I can't remember, Stallion God or something like that. I can't remember her name. These were, one of them at least is a rap artist. They used to be a stripper. So is that what these young ladies are imitating? Is this what we want people from the outside, from different areas, other parents want to see our daughters pose themselves as? And I would assume that being in the high school is kind of a preparation to more a professional workplace. I don't know any professional workplace that allows that kind of dress. So one of the things I had an issue with is, how do I enforce this? Is this in your dress and appearance? And if I do find that, I'm just a substitute teacher. Apparently, this has been going on, and no one has been identifying, addressing it, sending these young ladies back home, just come back, dress appropriately. And I suggest that's what happens. If someone's not coming in, not dressed appropriately, if it is in the dress appearance guidelines, just say, hey, you're not dressed appropriately, go back home, come back when you have something on, better. And if it's like, oh, if I don't have anything on, then that'd be a question of if you need to go to DI or something. If my daughter were to leave the household, and I mean, she is a direct representation of who I am and why I allow, what my standards are. And for the military, standards are there to identify if someone is acting inappropriately or just from their appearances, if they're not complying. That's usually a clue of worse things to come. And some people say do not judge on appearance, but just from my experiences, once you see someone dressed a certain way, you can really identify there's something going on there. And I'm not going to pass judgment, but there's definitely a clue, and I'm not going to say what's going on. But if the parents are not are thinking maybe the children should make their own rules, and I'd be wondering about that. Why should the children make their own rules when they don't even know what are the consequences of their actions? They should set the guidelines down so later on it's not like this where, I'm sorry, I ran out of time. It's not where, you didn't tell me that that's what's going to happen if I did that. I ran out of time. Thank you for listening to me and listening to my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Jericho. Appreciate your input on that. Thank you so much. Okay, Laura Wheatley, is that right, Laura?
I have two things. First, this is the presentation of PTA's, the hours that they put in last year. So this is 23-24's hours in a dollar amount, represented in a dollar. So we just wanted to present this to the school district as how many And this is a very conservative number because not everyone reported their volunteer hours. So this is a conservative estimate of how much we were worth last year. So anyway, just wanted to give that to you, present that to you. And
That is
also,
a lot. Thank you. That's impressive.
what do you want?
Why don't you come and stand in front? We'll do the same thing that we just did. Catherine, would you mind? Would you come and, let's all step back and get everybody as tight as we can. 117.
Did you get it?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much. Very impressive.
Sit right against there. Get it out here and take it. Perfect. Perfect, that's good.
Yes, that's all the schools in the district that reported their hours, so. Well, according to a website that talks about what volunteer hours were worth, Utah was calculated about $33 an hour between the volunteer who comes in, the babysitter who takes care of their kids while they're there, and what the school doesn't have to provide as far as, being an employee, that kind of stuff. So that's what that's calculated at, about 33, a little bit. And then the other thing that I did want to tell you that I didn't write down was that the Raise the Cap initiative that is going through the legislature this coming year, they're trying to get an extra percentage to education, trying to take 1% more off of what's already being spent. And I wish I could remember, but the PTA asked if they would make it individualized to every school district, and so they made a handout that is individualized. So I will be emailing that out, just so that you know that that will be coming, and that you'll be able to see if we do this initiative that they're trying to talk about, if it is voted in, what each school would receive if we didn't do it, and what we would receive if they did do it. So they have that breakdown. So we asked if they would do that. So thank you.
Okay,
Oh,
absolutely.
yes, please.
Yeah.
What this
Yes.
is to raise, anyway, it is to raise the cap of money that is distributed out of the fund, that is the trust lands money that goes to the school.
Okay, yes,
Currently,
this is familiar.
we have a lot of money sitting there, but we can only distribute 3% of the money across the state to each of the schools that the school community councils then use to go to the schools. And this raise the cap is to raise the constitutional levy, or the constitutional requirement on that, to 4%, so that we increase it by 1% more, which will then go to every single student in the common or public schools in the state of Utah. So it's a big deal. It is not anything you should vote against. We are rah-rah for this. It's a tremendous opportunity because currently we're sitting on like $3.2 billion in that account, and we'd like to get more of that money out. Last year, this year the current numbers are we're going to distribute $192 million to the students in the state of Utah, and if we can increase that by 1% more, that gives lots more money to the schools and does keep our fund balance very much intact.
And so it does break it down by individual school, what each school would get.
And our legislators,
The
we put
handout.
out the paper that our legislators get showing how much money currently goes to every school in their legislative district, so that they know, and so this 1% is on top of that,
Yeah.
talking about how that will help. It's a great deal. Of all the things you're going to vote for this year, that's the one that's good.
So that's a separate initiative?
Yes, that's a separate initiative, and it's.
Yes, and it's similar to it sounds similar to another one that is more
Yes.
controversial. So
Yes, there are
they're
a
trying
lot of-
really hard to separate themselves.
There are a lot of things this year to vote on that people are going to have questions about, but the raise the cap is pure gold. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. Okay, anybody else here for public comment? Okay, we will move on to our action items. Approval of bond resolution. That's Dave Roberts and the superintendent too, possibly? Okay.
Do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so what you have before you tonight is the drafted language for the bond resolution that we have been talking about for a couple years. And I just want to, thank the board for the amount of diligent time that they've spent in trying to look at every avenue and every corner as far as this conversation is concerned, because I know that you guys have been toiling quite a bit about the impact this has on the residents of the county, but also, first and foremost, your consideration has been on the students, and I appreciate that perspective and that outlook as you guys have been moving forward. So what this is, as we've talked to experts in the field, we basically decided in our conversations that the resolution would be for a $220 million general obligation bond. That requirement requires that we meet certain deadlines, and one of those is that we have to have a resolution passed by the board before 75 days that the voters are allowed to vote on that resolution at the ballot. And so that's why it needs to be brought before you guys tonight, because next board meeting would be too late to meet that deadline requirement. It does specifically talk about other dates that we need to address, and also the impact of this general obligation regarding individual residents as well as commercial properties and agricultural properties. So all those approximated numbers are in that board recommendation. And I know that this has been a hard thing to it's been very well conversed and talked about, and I feel like you guys have done your due diligence in trying to sweep out every corner, try to take everything into consideration. So I just want public to note that this has been something that I know you guys have toiled with as you guys have talked about this, but also too want to recognize that the positive impact it will have on the students of Box Elder School District if this bond does pass, and we've outlined the intent of to which those funds will be used, and I'll just list those here so that the public can know what we've listed on the board recommendation. One is the construction of a new middle school in the Brigham City vicinity, construct a new middle school in the Tremont and Garland vicinity, update grade configuration and move 9th grade to Box Elder High School, update grade configuration and move 9th grade to Bear River High School, manage student growth and age of Lakeview Elementary School by moving to the existing Adele Young Intermediate School, manage growth and age of North Park Elementary by moving those students to the existing Alice Harris Intermediate School, furniture and fixtures to facilitate the grade configurations as we move those two elementary schools to an existing intermediate school and 9th grade back to the two high schools, and installation of air conditioning in schools without AC. Those have been the 8 points that I mentioned on there. And part of that, as we move to construct, we will also need to acquire new property. That is correct. And so that would be part of the construction process in regards to those two middle schools. So any questions in regards to the recommendation, and then I'm sure there's lots of discussion that needs to happen. Superintendent, you have anything that you'd like to add before? We could add that, purchase new property and construct. Yes, we could absolutely do that.
Sorry, forgot to turn my mic on. Mr. Gordon, sorry.
Any other questions regarding the actual recommendation?
I would concur with what Dave started out, talking about the amount of time. We have spent the last, I would say, a year and a half, if not close to 2 years in this discussion. And every July we have a work session where we spend probably from 1 o'clock until 5:30, and it's the same days we have our July board meeting. And for the last 2 Julys, just the one 6 weeks ago and the one a year and 6 weeks ago, we've had these same discussions. And one of the things that it's not 100% clear in this bond resolution, and it's not a bond resolution item, but currently we do have 4 levels of education in the Box Elder School District, and that being K through 5. Then we have intermediate schools that are 6th and 7th grade. We have middle schools that are 8th and 9th grade, and then high schools that are 10th, 11th, and 12th. And we've looked, and we just feel like the grade configuration, the way the curriculum comes out from the state, we looked at the fact that the 9th grade gets high school credit, and there's a real problem in remediation of 9th grade students who don't do well in the 9th grade to be able to get those same classes remediated in the 10th, 11th grades. It just needs to be said, the conflict that we have of trying to have 9th graders compete in Utah High School Activities Association activities from the 9th grade at going to both different high schools, it causes problems. And in the long run, we just feel like there's another, we've had the discussion the last 2 years of busing, and that means that we have one more level of busing where we stop instead of going to the elementaries or to the middle schools and the high schools, we go to that extra one, which adds, I don't know, Jason's, our transportation director's here. I've heard anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes extra. I would say 15. Right in that 15 in the morning and in the afternoon. And so we just think there's so much information out there, we just feel like it would be a better thing to pull this off, and this is the time to do it. Now, you don't have to bond to do that. It's not an election, but you do have to have the facilities in the place to do that. And that would mean we have to add more academic classrooms to both high schools, Bear River High and Box Elder High. And while we're at it, we're trying to upgrade the high schools in each end of the district according to their specific needs. In the Box Elder High School end, it's more towards the CTE facilities, and in the Bear River end, it's more towards the older portion of the building on the north end, the sciences and social studies area, I believe. And so we're looking at that as we go forward. Another thing that this board did that I think we followed what Cache Valley did. They hired a company, and we put out an RFP. There were 3 companies, I believe, Mr. Roberts, that put in for a referendum for proposals, what an RFP is. And the best one that won out was a company called Y2 Analytics out of Ogden. And they've worked with us for the last 5 months, 4 months, 5 months. They've held focus groups, 2 in the north end, 2 in the south end, and then as recently as up till July 10th, they sent out surveys, random surveys to a large enough people that they felt like they could get the N size which needed to analyze true data. And in doing so, one of the things that was interesting, they found out as they asked the questions in this survey, it started out just saying, how do you feel about going for $220 million bond? Well, on that first blush in that same survey, it was 40 to 60%. 40 said they would likely vote for it, 60% said they'd likely vote against it. But then throughout the rest of the survey, it gave information. It talked about these things that we're talking about. It was interesting how it gave information while yet asking questions. And by the time it got to the end, they said, now that you've been given more information, how do you feel? And it turned over into more likely to vote for it, to likely to vote for it, to 58%. And so we felt like in that Y2 Analytics survey, we were able to see what just in written word, not even people talking or not even giving them as much information as I've even given you here tonight, that people's minds would evolve into the fact that, yes, I can see we need that. Yes, I think we need that. I can see why, and they changed from 40, it moved at least that many people to move that. And so with that in mind, we've decided to bring this to the board to vote on, and we being staff. I will say another thing, we also proposed a $250 million bond. And with the $250 million bond, it was these 8 items that we talked about, plus on the Box Elder, the Brigham City side, we talked about having a B Center, which would be similar to what Bear River has in their Bear Center. Basically an indoor facility for practices, for PE. And on the north end, we proposed to have a venue gym in the high school where they would have a new gym to hold their, basically all of their winter type sports. And I guess you'd have to say volleyball and in the spring too. So any sports that require a gymnasium. What we found is even after the information was shared, the number was well below 50%.
Actually, it was 50-50.
It was at 50-50 that wouldn't vote, 50-50 to go for that. And so with that in mind, the board felt like they were given a pretty strong indication with that 58% that, hey, the end size was big enough to say, let's go for it, but they decided not to go for the bigger bond. In here, it also talks about, in the resolution, it talks about the median size household cost in Box Elder County is $450,000. So wherever your home is, you have to just do a little math and figure it one way or another. And for a $450,000 home, it would raise your taxes $238 a year. A little bit less, I think it's $18 a month, something like that. And so that's, of course, if you have a $900,000 home, it's twice that. And there's, apparently there's a lot of homes that are less than that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the median. So, and we can help anybody who's interested in wanting to do the math as we go through that. We do have right now 3 months, September, October, and basically November. I guess August to September, September to October, November, to sell this. And a lot of people say, well, that's not a lot of time. We feel like it's the right amount of time to really get some positive momentum behind this and see what we can do to help people understand how important it is, the facilities improvement in this school district that has been a long time coming. I will add to this, I'm having quite a lecture here, but it's been 18 years ago that Box Elder School District went for a bond and passed it by a few tenths of percentage points. It was like 50.3 or 4 to 49.6 or 7. And that was in the 2 high schools being remodeled. And as we go back and look at that, and this is something we're going to try to sell everybody on, is the simple fact that the board at that time said we're going to go in and remodel the 2 high schools, and we're going to use committees from both ends to decide exactly how we're going to do that. And at the time, Gary Allen was the principal at Bear River High School, and Darrell Eddington, thank you. I knew that name was going to slip me as soon as Darrell came out, was the principal at Box Elder High School. They both got their committees together, and that's where the Bear Center came into fruition in Tremonton, and that's where, the classroom wings and a few different things, it was decided by each end. And they did exactly what they said they were going to do with that bond money. And that's one of the things that was a concern when we listened to the focus groups. We were able, they were videotaped, and we as the board were able to watch those focus groups and hear what the people said. And one of the concerns is that, yeah, they say they're going to ask the money to do this, but they're going to do this. And this board, I know, is very committed to those 8 points that they talked about. Now, there is a little bit of, in upgrading both 9th grades to move 9th grade into the Box Elder High and Bear River High School, each one of them's a little different. And so there has to be some flexibility in how we handle that. But I'm very confident that this board will be very specifically excited to go forward with what we've talked about now for over a year and a half. And so with that, I think there's other things that, the board might want to talk about or discuss, things that I haven't brought up, but I've held the mic now for 5-10 minutes, so I'll turn it over.
Wade?
Yes.
So I've been one of the PTA moms forever, I remember when Wade was my principal and I was a PTA mom. Started out in Lincoln Elementary where there was one electrical outlet per room. It was so exciting. And just to see as we've been able to grow and these new schools have been created, the excitement and just the change in the kids' demeanor as they go into a new room. But interestingly enough, I've been here long enough that my son was the first school, or the first grade to go to Adele when we opened the intermediate schools. He's 40. They've replaced the carpet at Adele, and I was like, why are we doing this? And they said, it's a fourth of its way through its 100-year lifespan. And in my mind, I'm thinking, that's the new school. As I run into all these other people in town saying, well, the new schools are 70 years old. And if you haven't been in the schools, if you haven't spent time, if you haven't walked the halls, we educate far differently than we used to. And the things that we do, the technology we do, the things and the spaces that we need are so much different. Even when I got my degree back when dinosaurs ruled the earth. The classroom I taught in was a single enclosed classroom. I wasn't working with other teachers. I wasn't doing the PLCs. I was teaching in my little group. And we have changed so much. And our buildings need to reflect the progress and what we're doing and the way we educate people and children now. And we've talked about how exciting it was when we opened Sunrise High School. Those poor kids, I mean, they'd been in the basement of an 1890 church. And when they walked into a new school, it was like they suddenly became people. And if you'll look at their graduation rates have gone through the roof, their adult education has just soared. The things we are getting out of those kids by treating them like important people that deserve good public spaces to receive education is just phenomenal. And my kids are out of school, but my first two granddaughters are first grade and kindergarten this year, and they need to be in good schools. They're going to be the teachers. They're going to be probably your mayor, maybe your doctor. And if we're teaching these kids like we taught them 50, 60 years ago, it's not good enough. And this is a reach, and we know this is a big reach. I personally own residential property. I own commercial property. It's going to be a stretch, but I'm willing to do it for the benefit to the community because other PTA moms and other families deserve to have the opportunity that good education gives a family and gives a child. We're going to have to work hard, and we need everybody involved. But this is something that needs to be done.
Should we just start here and kind of go
Yeah.
this way?
Yeah, if you want.
Perfect. Jump around. Well, I'd just like to reiterate what many of the things that I've said in our discussions as a board, just more in a more public setting. I personally view the hard-earned dollars, not only that I pay in taxes, but each of you and all of our community, as a sacred trust that we need to utilize those tax dollars to the best of our ability. But we have some challenges. In addition to what Nancy said about improving the education of our children, we have old schools that are dilapidated, that are taking a lot of money to maintain. And schools that the hallways are too small, no windows. We have overcrowding. So we have a plan that we have worked on how to address these challenges. And this is a long-term plan. This isn't just for tomorrow. This is looking at 10, 20, 30 years into the future. What most efficient use of our tax money can we make to help the education of our kids? And so that's really what we're focusing on, long-term efficient use of our facilities. It takes a little bit of investment now, but in the long run, it's really going to pay off, not only in better education, but just in use of our funds. And the superintendent talked about the input that we got from Y2 Analytics. I just want to reiterate, add to what he said, that we took that input from the people that we surveyed, and that's how we established our 8 points. It's what we found was important as we went out and surveyed the community. So we took a lot of that information and into account as we're moving forward. I just really believe that the majority of our public, our county, education is important to us. It's important to every individual in our county. And I believe as we go out and help our community to understand and know what we as a board know as we've studied this, that they're going to support this bond because education is so important to our community. Once they understand the long-term savings, the efficient use of taxpayer money, that this is in for the long run, I think that they'll support it. That's all I have to say.
Well, I'll talk. I second what's been said. And one of the things that I found interesting in the survey that we did is because we've talked about this grade reconfiguration and going from a 4-level to a 3-level. And when we moved here to Brigham City almost 10 years ago, I had a son in the 3rd grade and a son in the 1st grade. And we looked at communities all through. And right now, some of you know that in Perry, we have Willard is a K-1 school, and 3 Mile Creek is a 2 through 5 school. So that's actually 5 levels for those people that live there. One of our deciding factors when we moved here to live in Brigham City is because I wouldn't have to split up my boys, moving to a new school in the middle of the year. And I see that challenge now as families are trying to commute or get kids to 5 levels. Some people have kids in every single school. So when we talked about these grade reconfigurations, we're trying to do what's efficient, what's best, and a long-term strategy. And as in that survey, we found over 80% of the people supported the grade reconfiguration. That was one of the questions that was on that survey. Now, not everybody does, but 80% did. Now, in order for that to happen, we have to have facilities that can make that happen. Like currently, we couldn't put another grade in the middle schools. They're overcrowded as they are. They were not built for the number of students that have that. So we have to put another. So there's changes, and it's a change, and it's not easy, and it's not convenient in some places. But as we're looking through the long-term lens of the long-term investment in the district, and upkeep of buildings and transportation needs and some of those other areas that we're looking at and family concerns. Like for me, and like I said, 80% is not 100% and not everybody's going to like that idea. But for me as a parent, now I've got kids in 3 levels right now. I don't have them in 4. We're out of elementary school. And but even by the time these buildings are built, I don't think my children will be, maybe my youngest will still be in school. But it is an investment for the future, and it is something, and the safety of our schools. Old buildings, not safe in some cases, and we're doing all we can to keep them safe. I'm not saying don't send your kids to school. We are doing what we can do, but we need to do better, and we need to provide these students. And depending on the school you go to, there's some schools that are like, well, this is great, and there are some schools that are great. We're not replacing every school in our district, but we have 2 middle schools that are in dire need of help. And we have 2, at least 2, if not 3 elementary schools that are at the end stages of their life and barely hanging on by a thread. And that's the school, one of the schools my kids went to elementary school. And when we talk about how we teach and the technology, well, there's more than one outlet, but I think there just might be 4. And when you're talking about how students are learning and how they're interacting and how we're providing light and I would say that class sizes, we're crowded, we're going to have higher class sizes, and then we're going to lose teachers, and then we're going to have new there's just a whole domino effect that it's affecting so many things. So I, like, when we share this message, we want to be clear that we are trying to do what is best for our district and be most financially sound that we can be in a long-term lens. And we believe, and I really believe, when people are educated and understand, then they will support the bond. And it's not, nobody wants, like, oh yeah, raise my taxes, sounds great. But as what the superintendent said as well, in the past when this board has bonded, they did what they said they were going to do. And we intend to do exactly what we say we're going to do, and to provide the needs for these students in our district. And so I'm excited about it. I'm excited to talk to people and to share with them what we've done. I've been on the long-term capital committee, and it's been at least 2 years that we've been talking about this on that. More formally, probably in a year and a half. But this is not like a impulsive decision. It's been well thought out, and I'm excited to actually get out in the community and share what we have learned and what we have seen, and invite people to come to our schools and invite people to ask questions and get out in the community so we can support this, because I think it's going to be a really positive impact, not just for the schools, but the community as well.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. I'm going to date myself here, but my 8th grade class was the first class to go into the middle school up here, and it was called the junior high then. We were so excited, and I still have friends that say, "You mean the new school?" And I'm now 72, so it's been a long, long time since that school was built, and it truly needs to be rebuilt. We need a new school on both ends. Like Nancy said, education has truly changed through the years. We need a bigger schools, brighter schools, more windows for just the better education of our students. Also, I know you see at the different schools, you see a lot of modular units. Some people call them tin sheds. Anyway, that is not good for education, and we have to do something to improve on that. And to go from 4 levels to 3 levels, we're able to take the Harris and the Young intermediate schools, and yes, there'll be some remodeling, and remodel those into larger elementary schools. But they're wonderful schools, and that will be a real plus for those kids. And then we'll be able to, alleviate North Park and also Lakeview, and that will be a real plus there. And we have discussed this for literally a year or two. We have had so many discussions on this. And I know there's people that say, well, I don't have any kids in school anymore. And I look at it this way. The Box Elder School District's been great to my kids. It's been great to me. And I just feel that as a good citizen, and I know it's going to cost a little bit more to your taxes, but I know that as a good citizen, you need to pay it forward to help those that are going to come after you. And I just think that always is a positive thing to do, and you never go wrong by doing that. Anyway, that's all my comments. So, Connie, it's yours.
I'm going to talk about something a little different. And so how do we get the word out? I live in Tremont, Utah, and part of being on the Board of Education is getting involved in your community. And I've tried really hard over the last 40 years to be involved in my community and in my schools. But one thing that we have going for us is school community councils. There are on our community councils some wonderful, wonderful individuals that sit on those community councils that care about kids. It's all about the students. And so as a Board of Education, we want to spend some time with our community councils, and we want to educate them. And in the past, we have met with the community councils, and we found it to be a really, really great option as we have discussion, and they teach us things. Those councils are wise, and they help us to understand various things about their particular school. I think it's important that we have great community outreach, that we reach out to our cities, that we reach out to Kiwanis, that we reach out to all these clubs, of these service clubs that can help us. And in doing so, establish, again, a trust. Well, it was mentioned before, but 18 years ago, we decided what we would do with this bond money. And I can tell you, I can tell you that every one of those things happened, and more happened because of that bond election. So as I sit here, I'm committed to go out and visit with the community and share what we're planning to do, because I know that schools are at the heart of our community. They are the very heart of our communities. And so we just need to let people know, hey, we need to make an investment. And there's nothing better to invest in than education. So community councils, be ready, because we need your help. And those community leaders, we're going to be calling on you to help us. I know a lot of leaders in Tremont, and I rub shoulders with them on a regular basis. And I am confident that these individuals will join us and will help us. And I believe we can pass this bond this year.
I feel like we've been very well educated by the previous board members, and I don't have much to say other than I believe this is the best move for our school district. Financially, for our students, for our teachers. We've looked at every angle. We've discussed all different configurations. We've really talked this and learned from other people, learned from experts, all the options. And I truly believe these 8 points are the best thing we can do for our kids, for our teachers, for our administrators, for our district as a whole. And I stand behind the bond 100%.
All right, so one of my biggest concerns was the overcrowding in elementary. And in the June board meeting, we had to vote on open enrollment schools, and not counting the Western elementary schools, we have 10 elementary schools, and 7 of those are over 100% capacity, with one of them at 146%, and none of them have air conditioning. And with the growth that is happening, that's just not a sustainable thing. We can't continue to squeeze more kids in a classroom and not give them air conditioning. I think some of those classes are probably already at over 30. I don't know what the class sizes are this year, but if we don't have a way to build new schools and relieve the pressure on those elementary schools, they're going to be up to 35 kids in a classroom without air conditioning. So adding air conditioning and converting the intermediate schools so we have pressure released on those elementary schools will be a very big asset, and I think it will help our kids to learn more as well, where they're not so hot in the afternoons. The remaining 3 elementary schools are also at about 90% capacity, so we just are out of room in elementary, and there's no way to fix that. Even for some of them, we can't add a portable because there's nowhere to put another portable without losing some of their play space, or there's just even no room to add on grass or other pavement. So I know this is a really hard decision, and we have talked about it every month for the 2 years I've been on the board. In depth, we've looked at every angle, and I know it is a tough time financially for a lot of people, but I don't want to sacrifice the future of these kids being able to learn. Your turn, Karen.
Before I give my thoughts, I was going to ask Dave Roberts, our business administrator, to explain a little bit more in the packet. It talks about the property tax costs of bonds. And there's 2 different numbers, and I was telling Danielle, she was asking me questions, so I thought it might be good if Dave went over that. The 2 different numbers. One of numbers says that it's estimated amount of $347.67 per year on a property residence of $450, and then the superintendent had mentioned the next paragraph where it says that it is $238 on a property of $450. So just to kind of explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 238 is the increase, and so the total. So right now we have some levies out there. They're currently paying on existing GO bond as well as some lease revenue bonds, and so the additional amount with this bond, the 220, would be that 238, which would bring them to a total on a medium-sized home of 450 to that 347. Alex, is that right?
Yeah, we're looking at a standalone amount.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. Alex Buxton with Zions Bank, Public Finance Municipal Advisor to the school board. Yes, the higher amount, Karen, that you mentioned is the standalone, we call, which would be that $220 million if there was no other debt outstanding. That's exactly what the amount would be for, or is for, the 220. But because, like Dave mentioned, the school district currently has debt that they're paying off, the actual increase as those bonds are being paid off, the net effect of the 220 is the 238. So net increase compared to standalone amount, not considering existing debt that the district already has. Does that answer your question, Karen?
Yeah, I think I understood that, but I wanted that on the record.
Yes.
The bond is, what we're trying to do, I think, by doing it now, is to minimize the impact that
And perhaps I could just add one more thing. The way the ballot language will read as presented will be both of those amounts, because it'll say existing, what the standalone amount is, and then there's a separate paragraph that says, however, and Ryan Bierke, who's here from Chapman and Cutler, who drafted the election resolution, could speak to this as well, but there'll be a second paragraph that says, considering the district already has debt that they're paying, the increase is going to be the 238. So that's where it's very important that you all and the rest of us explain that as voter information brochures go out and website and everything, so that when people do go to cast their vote, there's no confusion in those two amounts. They understand exactly what the two amounts mean. So we'll help you with that as well.
This has been a really hard decision, as all the board members have said. As we noted, we use the YGK Analytics, which is a respected market research firm. They did a lot of work in going out and collecting data. They came back and basically said, based on their research, that the Box Elder voters are generally unsupportive of both potential bond proposals. That was a hard decision because we feel like that it might be the best time to go forward with this bond. I think what we are asking families to do is to look at your budgets, look at the numbers that are being proposed, and make that choice within your families. It may not be a convenient time right now. Everybody's feeling the pains of the inflation and the economic situation that we as a country are in. But I do believe in choice, and so maybe going a little bit, asking a little bit deeper questions is asking the homeowners, taxpayers, look at your budget, make sure it fits in what you guys can afford, and if you can, we would appreciate the support on helping with this issue. But we understand that people have a lot of things going right now. There's a request from Rocky Mountain that is proposing a 30% increase in energy rates, and all of this is coming down together. So I hope that we're not asking too much of our homeowners.
Okay, there any other discussion?
Hey, just a couple additional comments.
Okay.
One, if the voters do pass this bond and we're able to facilitate the 8 items that are on this list, we're going to have over 97% of our students in a reinforced masonry building, which basically means that if an earthquake happens, that the walls won't shear off and fall and the roof collapse straight down. The building should be able to support the roof, and the walls should not, because they're reinforced, should not tumble down. And so that's one of the safety elements of this. But I'd also like to mention too that with these new buildings and the increased space, it allows us to, right now, currently, the only population group, grade group, or population groups, specific groups that is growing in our school district is our special ed students. And right now, it is becoming more and more difficult to find adequate and reasonable space for those students. And I think that's a population that we need to always consider, not just our general ed students, but also recognize that as this population grows, that it requires more facility space, more resources. And right now, we're kind of at a tipping edge with those kind of things. And so this would provide, by allowing Lakeview and North Park to move into the bigger intermediate schools, it will provide more opportunities for our special ed students to receive the education, the proper education that they're also entitled to, because it gives us more footprint for that. Also, too, moving from those buildings are 1962, Lakeview, North Park, Box Elder High School, Bear River is 1951. You're moving, you're giving the opportunity basically for every student that is enrolled in Box Elder School District to experience a new facility, a new education model, a new curriculum space by attending those middle schools, because every student that comes through elementary will also have the opportunity to attend those middle schools. And so every student from here for 70 years, 62 years, whatever those schools stand for, will have that opportunity to experience this new building and be able to experience a better learning environment than what we currently can provide our middle age students. But I just want to emphasize again that every student over the next 70 years will have that opportunity. And it is a long-term investment. And I know a lot of people look at this as tax, but after the 20 years is over, you've got another 50 years possibly that this building will be in place, that we've paid for by people that were forward-thinking and understanding the needs of students going forward for 70 years. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands that we're not only considering the safety of the physical facilities, but we're also considering the safety of the students, both in a mental as well as a physical, as well as a social environment, because I think these schools are going to enhance all three of those areas in safety for our students. And so I think that's another thing that we don't always mention is we talk about the physical safety of those buildings, but oftentimes we don't mention the mental and emotional benefit of these buildings as they provide just a newer, more up-to-date, exciting place to come and learn. And I think that in and of itself puts in a frame of mind for a student that they can do difficult things, they can be somebody, and there's a place that they go that not only do they feel safe physically, but they feel safe mentally and emotionally too in that same aspect. So just wanted to add that piece.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Could I just, sorry, that triggered another memory. You've heard me say this before, but I've been a superintendent for 23 years, and in 2003, I was at North Summit School District, and we, the board proposed a bond to build a new middle school, and they were able to pass that bond and build a new middle school. One of the things, because of, there's a report called the CRDC report that's been around forever, and these guys up here that have been principals know what that's all about. And in that report, we have to keep track of disciplinary issues. And when we did that in North Summit, we went from an older building, very, very narrow hallways, very much like our current middle schools here in Box Elder, to bigger, more wide open hallways, bigger commons areas, more lighting. And in 1 year, the number of discipline issues in the hallways went down by 32%. And just last night, it was back to school night at Box Elder Middle School, and I went over and walked up and down the hall, and with parents there and kids, people moving around, there are pinch points in that building where you have to stand and wait for a few minutes for everybody to flow by so that you can take your turn to go up a stairway or up the hallway. And for those of you who were in middle school, who have kids in middle school, and especially if you're a boy in middle school, if somebody brushes your shoulder, you got to throw down. And we have a lot of fights in our middle schools, and I honestly think, you know, we get more complaints from parents about the dangers in the bathrooms, the darkness, the closed-inness. There are some things you can do now in today's world with, just like we have in Sunrise High School, with our more open bathroom situation where you don't go behind a door and then go behind another door. You can just really make things a lot more safe than what they are currently. It almost seemed like this winter, maybe it was early spring, if you weren't aware, but we had to shut down school at Bear River Middle School for 3 days because their main sewer line broke right underneath the building. And because of the smell and everything, I think it was it a Thursday or was it a Wednesday? Thursday. So we missed school that day and the next day, and luckily one of the I think it was Utah's disaster cleanup came in and cleaned it all up, and Corey and his staff. And we've had a couple of problems this year at Box Elder Middle School, same type of things with electricity. They're just at the end of their lives, and it is getting really tough. And I cannot tell you, Keith's the assistant superintendent over secondary, the number of complaints and concerns we have from parents about the fighting. I'll tell you this, Bear River Middle School has an area called, I think it's called the Bear Cave back in there, where it kind of goes back in the dark, and it's just a tough place, and there's just not enough teachers to patrol the hallway. And in today's world, when they design schools, we went to one down in West Haven, is that where we were? And a principal or a vice principal could stand in one spot, see all the way down that hallway, all the way down that hallway, all the way down that hallway, and all the way down that hallway. And just their mere presence getting up and down makes a huge, huge difference. And I think one of the things that is my biggest responsibility as a superintendent is safety of the students in this school district. And I truly believe that with what Dave mentioned about reinforced masonry and just the sheer fact of the mental health of a new building, this is the right thing to do. This has been tough. I've been through a bond. I know how much work it is, and the interesting thing is I know how much work the bond was up to the bond. I didn't know how much work it was going to be after the bond until the bond happened. That's when the real work starts, when Corey and his guys and the principals and all the work that goes on with making decisions about color of tile in restrooms and those types of things. I mean, that's how particular it gets. So I know I've talked a lot tonight, but this is probably, I would say in my 23 years as a superintendent, one of the probably 5 biggest decisions that I've recommended to a board in that 23 years, and that's at Box Elder School District to go for this bond resolution for the good of the school children in Box Elder School District. It's going to help everybody as they go through on both the north and south end with both the middle schools, getting new middle schools and new high schools. And 2 different elementaries are going to be closed down that right now are just really, really, really old and really, really, really full. And if you walk up and down those halls during the day, you'll see interventions occurring in corners of the hallways, teachers out with their book bags. If you've had elementary kids, you know what, it's a book bag. Is that the right term? Yeah. Okay, and they're out on tables, sorting the bags so they can get their reading material in there, but they're all out in the hallway because there's no place else to go. So with that, Mr. President, I'll shut up. How's that?
Hey, President Hyde?
Yes.
Just want to welcome and also thank Ryan and Alex for their help on this. Ryan is from Chapman and Cutler, and he's the bond counsel, and he's the one that helped with the resolution wording. I wanted to thank him. It was kind of short notice, to be honest with him, and so he really did make it a very concerted effort to help us out in this. And then Alex has been very helpful in counseling us and talking through some of the time frames as well as the impact and helping us understand the financial ramifications of the decision. But my recommendation that I've written up is that the board approve this resolution for $220 million. That's been the recommendation that I've provided for you. So any other additional questions you guys got for me before you guys take to vote?
Okay, we just need then a motion and a second for the approval of the bond resolution.
I move that the board approve the resolution providing for the holding of a special bond election on November 5th, 2024 regarding the issuance of up to $222 million of general obligation bonds and providing for related matters.
Okay, Brian Smith has made the motion. Do we have a second?
Before you second, it's 220, right? I think Brian just said,
20 million.
220 million?
right, I think, okay.
Or 20, okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, Tiffany Summers has made the second. We're going to do a roll call vote. So we're going to start with Nancy.
Nancy Kennedy, yes?
Brian Smith, yes?
Julie Taylor, yes.
Wade Hyde, yes.
Connie Archibald, yes.
Tiffany Summers, yes.
Danielle Wright, yes.
Karen Cronin, yes.
Okay, the motion passes. So we're going forward with our bond.
And when we knock on your door, let us in and talk to us.
Okay. Okay, so now we have to go and discuss the meeting schedule for the bond public hearing and meeting.
Hey, Ryan, would you come to the mic and just explain our conversation that we had regarding the dates? Because initially, I had communicated to the board that we'd have to change one of the two public board meeting dates because of an email communication from you. But after our communication, if you could just clarify for them why we're able to continue to hold our regular board meetings and also do our public hearing and our public meeting on those dates.
Sure. And thank you for having me. It's been a number of years since I've been up here, so it's nice to be back. That's right. So it is great to be back. We have all these dates built into your resolution to meet various state requirements. And part of what you've got going on is that certain dates are dependent on when you take certain other actions. And so when we first went through the calendar, we were looking at one final deadline of October 15th for your notice of election to go out. And then you have to have your public hearing within, I think it's 30 days of that date. And so your September meeting didn't comply. But then we realized, well, no, wait, you can post that notice of bond election earlier. And so we could move that period back to fit within your September meeting. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to move up that date that you actually give notice of the bond election. It will still comply with state law. It will just be earlier than you have to do it, which is allowed. And that will allow you to have the public hearing at your September meeting. The public meeting that we've got set for your October meeting has a different deadline requirement under state law, and that's why we've got those separated there. So there'll be lots of things that are going on in the background that we're making sure that you comply legally. Any other questions? And that's all already laid out in the resolution that you've adopted, and we did get the correct dates in there.
Okay, so September 11th is a public hearing, is that correct?
September 11th will be your public hearing to receive public input on the issuance of the bonds and the potential impact of the projects on the private sector. So that's what the legal requirement is. That came in a few years ago when you had a lot of entities who were doing recreational facilities, and they felt like the legislature felt like they were competing with private business, and so they put in this requirement for all projects. I don't think you'll be really competing with the private sector with your schools, but we have to do it anyway. And then in October you have what they call a public meeting, not necessarily a public hearing, even though it's kind of the same way, where you have the presentation of pro and con arguments for the issuance of the bonds.
Ryan, could you, from your experience, could you explain that particular, that pro and con presentations? How have you seen that before?
Well, so basically what happens is you have to allow for pro and con arguments to be submitted, and we've got the dates outlined here. The board does have to prepare a pro argument, and then the public is allowed to submit a con argument. And then those arguments are posted on the statewide public information, or the statewide election website, as well as your website for people to see. And then you have that public meeting. And generally what we see happen is that the submitted written pro and con arguments are provided at that meeting and introduced. Okay. And then basically you open it up for public comment in the same way that you would do a public hearing for people to present additional pro and con arguments to the extent that they want to. Same way that you kind of did your public comments earlier, we see people do the same thing, where you're allowed a certain amount of time you can speak once, and those sorts of things. So.
It said in the resolution, like, we're allowed 500 words, and the cons are allowed 250.
No, so the initial argument, you can do a
Okay.
pro argument and a con argument. The initial
Rebuttal.
argument is 500 words.
Okay.
And then you're allowed to submit a rebuttal, and those are limited to 250.
So is that as they stand and read those, it's not like you get 2 or 3 minutes, you just?
Those are just for the written arguments
Okay.
that are submitted and that have to go on the websites. And then, like I said, often you'll see those read at the meeting to kind of introduce the concept. When they get up to give their own pro and con, then what we generally see is the time limit instead of a word limit that you have.
We had the question, now it lose, who's the public, we had the public election official.
So technically speaking, it's your business administrator.
Okay.
However, because the county runs the election for you, they're considered kind of a provider election officer. So you've got a couple people who will fulfill that role depending on what's being done. So most of the election-related materials, the election officer would be your county clerk running it. But when, like, the arguments are submitted to your election officer, well, that's your business administrator.
Very good.
So it just depends on what part of the code we're looking at, who that might be, and that's why you see kind of all of those lumped into the one.
Very good.
Okay?
Okay.
And Ryan, from my understanding, you can have as many arguments as you want, but you only print one, is that correct?
Right, so as I said, the board has to prepare one, and then you can have voters, registered voters can submit what they want. And then the business administrator then selects which arguments will go forward. Generally, what we would recommend is that if you have multiple con arguments and you select one, that maybe you let them know who the others are so they can all come together. And then when you get to the public meeting, then you allow for anyone to speak at that point in time and present. But at least for the written portion, it's only one. And if there are no con arguments, we've seen that, but it happens with regularity. What we generally recommend to people is that you set it up the same way, but when you have your space for the con argument, you just say no con argument was submitted. That's what we generally recommend. We've seen people do it other ways, but that's what we.
Is there a time frame they have to submit them prior to those hearing or the meeting?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, and that's all laid
part
out
of
in
the
your
calendar.
resolution. There are deadlines for each of those, and we've set those out so that it's there.
Okay.
And all of those are based on statutory provisions.
Very good.
Okay.
So in our so our next board meeting is when those pro and con arguments will be. Am I understanding that?
No. So the next board meeting is your public hearing,
And then
which
the
is
next one, okay.
and then the following one. And
Gotcha,
then
thank
at your
you.
next board meeting as well, we'll probably have another resolution come before you,
think that's
which is
October 9th.
sort of your election procedures that will outline kind of polling places, polling locations, formalities like that aren't necessarily available right now because the county clerk's still working through that, so.
But as far as the arguments that are being submitted, it says September 6th is that deadline, right? For the pro and the con that is submitted in writing.
Yes,
So that's coming right up.
it comes up very quickly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
And then you turn that and give them the opportunity to do the rebuttal.
okay.
And our board meeting is October 9th.
And then
so
we'll
do it then.
Board must submit.
And that's also beach days if anybody's, everybody's gonna be busy.
Okay.
So we'll look forward to being back up here on the October 9th to celebrate with you.
You'll get some peach pie, how's that?
That's right. There we go.
Or peach cobbler, one of the two.
Okay.
Hey, Ryan, one additional question. How do I, or as a board, how do we notify people that may want to submit a con argument? How do they get notified?
There is no statutory requirement for you to provide notice other
A
than.
mechanism of any, okay.
Other than, that's why we kind of build it in your resolutions, is so that if somebody's looking, they can see, okay, here are the dates that we've spelled out.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's laid out by statute if somebody goes and looks, but there is not a requirement that it says, hey, this is a Class A notice that you have to do or anything like that. It's just, it's statutory deadlines and that's it.
So the con comments, they're written first, one. And there can be others that come in of the con that aren't written, or just the people that have written?
So you can have multiple people submit con arguments
Okay,
by the deadline. And at that point, the business administrator will select one to move forward,
okay,
to be the one that goes on the websites.
okay.
Again, if you have multiple, it'd probably be good to coordinate with the people to let them potentially exchange ideas, because you do have one deadline and then there's a few other days for them to submit a final. And then when you get to that public meeting, that's where, if there were multiple people with con arguments, that they can come in and still present their ideas, and they still have that opportunity. It's just that it won't be part of the print materials that go on the websites. But it will be part of the public meeting and available.
And so at the time when the pro and the con happen, there have been times when we've raised taxes here on the board. And there have been people that have come in and spoken pro, and there have been those that have spoken con. So that's exactly what's going to happen. So we are definitely going to have a pro statement, but there can be people in the audience that also come up with a pro statement.
Right, your pro statement is required for the written portion.
Right.
And so that's why we often will see those read at the start as well. But you, as part of the public meeting, you don't necessarily give a pro statement other than what's been submitted.
Oh, okay.
Do we follow the same guidelines as we would on our public comment, like 3 minutes for an individual? If they're here with the group, 6 minutes?
Yeah,
We can do the
that's
same
the way
thing.
we
Okay.
recommend, is that you follow exactly the way you do with your
Okay.
public comments. And we've had some people ask, does it have to be equal per side, one pro, one con? Our recommendation is that you let everyone speak.
Okay.
And the written comments, there's just one of each. We don't put a whole listing. There's just one of
Right.
each that go
Yeah.
forward in the publications.
Yes.
Okay.
One question is once this, the resolution has just been passed, correct? As a board and even as a staff, we have to be a little more selective now as we speak, as we go forward.
Correct.
We have to present what we're proposing, but not necessarily.
As a board and as a staff, you're not allowed to use any funds to influence the election. That means you can't be saying, vote for this. You can't be trying to only present positive information. You can give the facts to people. Of what you're proposing. And that goes so far as using your district email for these things. They watch that. You can't try to influence the election using your district provided email. Now, it does recognize that you're individuals and you have your own rights, and you can speak for yourself and give your own opinions, but you need to make a kind of clear distinction when you're acting or giving your own opinion versus when you're acting as a member of the board.
Also on our web page, we can present what all of this is on the web page, give information, we can't say, go vote.
You can't say go vote. You can lay out the facts for people. You can lay out, these are needs that we have, these are the things that we plan to do, and here's why. We do recommend we've seen that facts can sometimes be presented in influential manners. So we recommend that you watch the language that you use. You try to make sure you keep it neutral. And you can put that on your website. In fact, you'll be required to put your plan of finance on your website, what the projects you plan to do. But those are some things to be wary of, is that you do need to make sure you're not, as a board member, trying to influence. As an individual, you can give your opinions.
Alex has got a
Well, I
comment.
was just gonna say, Steve, you can certainly say go vote. You just
Yeah.
can't say go vote yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Go
vote.
vote.
That's
Yeah.
the neutral way of doing it.
Go ahead, Keith.
My question is, what can we do with our employees?
Again, your employees cannot influence the election.
Correct.
They can't use,
We influence our employees.
no.
We can just go present the facts of what we're.
You can present the facts to your employees, you can tell them what you're doing, you can encourage them to vote. You can't tell them to vote yes. Now.
Give them the locker room speech.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I was told.
Yeah.
That was how it's.
But, you know, you look for your community partners. You look for people who can go out and carry that flag for you and see and look for those.
Could you clarify the line for us with employees speaking to their neighbors about it in a non-official capacity to, to try to share? I'm just, like, ask me over the fence, is that different kind of thing?
Again, when it's over the fence, you're at home, you're speaking as your own self, you're allowed to do that. You know, we can't. You can't use school resources, and you need to be careful that you are making, well, this is what I personally am doing, not that I'm telling you as a teacher at such and such school that, you need to do this.
Can you speak to the social media line?
Social media line is the same. If it's the district's social media, you can't influence. It's got to be facts. If it's a community member who's putting this up, obviously we don't control community members, and everybody has the right to express their own opinion. But if it's you as a board member and it's linked to your board member profile on the district's website, be careful.
Jason, I think you had a question?
I just was wondering with buses, can we put a go vote?
I'm in Davis School District, and often they would have a big sign out in front of the schools saying, bond election on such and such day, please vote. If you're encouraging people to vote and here's the date, you're okay. You can't have on the bus, vote yes. Yeah, that's right. You can't have certain letters covered just right so that it spells yes underneath or anything like that. That kind of stuff.
But if a private, well-to-do citizen wants to fly a plane across saying vote yes, they can do whatever they want. It's all about school district funds and the influence of the school district. But that's why it's so important to get the movers and shakers of your community on board as part of your election committee.
Absolutely.
Because as Ryan alluded to, they're the ones that are going to be carrying that flag for you.
Absolutely.
So if we do prepare a trifold pamphlet, whatever it is, we can prepare that. It just has to be just the facts of what the bond is going to be.
Now, you will be required to do a voter information pamphlet.
Okay, that's.
So legally you're required because your tax impact is more than $15. There are certain things that you have to put in there, but a lot of times you're also kind of putting some of your reasons in there. But again, it's got to be factual. Yeah, I know, it's cool. And you may have other flyers that go out, again, as long as, if you're putting them out, it's all factual.
And Ryan, if I understand correctly, that begins tonight.
That begins tonight.
Okay.
Now, actually.
About 5 minutes ago when you guys took the vote, so, yeah. Exactly.
So if we form a Friends of the Box Elder School District Bond Committee, or if that committee is formed.
If that committee is formed.
Okay.
Not if we form it.
Not if you form it, but if
Then
it's formed.
businesses, individuals can donate money to that.
Yeah, they can do whatever they would like
Okay.
to that committee, and that committee makes its own decisions on what it does. They can come and ask you for facts and things like that. It's as long as you're not providing them with paper and everything that they need to do things and, yeah.
Right.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we have our dates. Are we good there? Do we need anything else? We good? Okay. Thank you both for coming tonight, helping us out. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we'll go to our action item number 2, approval of the energy savings performance contract with JCI. Dave Roberts.
Yes, so back in October, we, in board meeting, we talked about doing an energy audit and had that approval. Scott is here to present just a 5-minute presentation on the completion of that and our proposal tonight for a contract and a financing mechanism to implement that energy audit. So go ahead, Scott.
I actually made copies of this presentation, so you save your necks.
Okay.
It's a short one. You should have received the executive summary that I sent out. This is just going to go a little deeper.
Thank you so much. Nice paper.
Okay, again, it's great to be back. It's been about a year since we've been here. We've been working with David and your staff, Corey and his staff, to go through your schools, 1.3 million square feet of them, and to look for opportunities there within the schools themselves. So the agenda today is we're going to talk about what we found, the FIMs, or what we call facility improvement measures. We have some projected project financials, which I sent out in the executive summary. We'll just review those, and a project cash flow. I sent that out, and we'll just review that. So the 5 major facility improvement measures were lighting, interior lighting LED, upgrade and replace the building automation system at 2 of the sites, building envelope, weatherization upgrades, water conservation, and plug load management. The lighting, as you can see here, this is a picture at Cache School District, the band room, before and after. We talked about earlier tonight about quality lighting and making a good environment for the students and the faculty. The LED lighting really does make a big difference. You've done quite a bit of lighting also already, and that makes a big difference. But we're looking at upgrading over 10 other facilities within your district, about 9,200 fixtures will either be retrofitted or replaced. It's going to provide energy savings, more light, less, more light, less energy. It's just kind of like a win-win, and less maintenance for Corey's staff. These lamps burn a lot longer, and so that's a win-win for you. The next one is we were able to fit in 2 of the sites. Within the district, you have an old obsolete, what we call an iNet control system. This is what controls all the ventilation, the heating, and the cooling within the schools. The iNet system that's out there is obsolete. You can't get parts anymore, new parts for them. You can send in your old parts and get repaired parts and get them back. As you can imagine, that's quite expensive. And at some point in time, that's not going to be made available anymore. So we're going to go through and help replace all the controls in 2 of your schools, which will not only reduce your deferred maintenance, it will actually reduce your energy costs too, because we're going to put in some new programs to run the fans and the pumps and things more efficiently. Building envelope, we've talked a lot about air conditioning. The picture there you can see at the bottom of the door. This just happens over time. There's nothing you really do about it except we're going to go through and seal the doors, windows, the wall joints, the pipe penetrations, and even adjust some doors as needed. This is at 19 of the sites. It'll present less drafts, better comfort, and obviously save energy. We wouldn't allow this to happen in our homes, so we shouldn't allow it to happen in our schools. Water conservation. Water is still relatively cheap here in Utah compared to most states, but we're going to go through. We couldn't do any irrigation. If you have a question, why wouldn't you do any field lighting or field watering? Because it's all irrigation. It's very inexpensive water, and so it doesn't cost, it's not cost justifiable to change that out at this point. Someday it will be, but as of right now it's not. So we're going to go through and retrofit some of the sinks, replace some of the urinals and toilets. The ones that can be retrofitted will be retrofitted. The ones that can't be will be replaced, and we'll do that at 19 of the sites also. As I said earlier, you have 1.3 million square feet. You've got a great man named Mike Carter that goes around and turns things off. But 1.3 million square feet spread over the county is quite the job to do. we're going to bring some automation to him to give him some tools where we'll be able to install 370 of these BERT controllers, which goes around and just turns things off when they should be turned off, like a soda machine. A soda machine's built one way, and that's to sell a lot of product. It's not built for energy, okay? And what happens when no one's around the school at nighttime? What happens in the summertime when no one's around, or the holidays when no one's around? These little BERT controllers will turn those down or reduce the temperature down, so you're not wasting all that energy. We're talking about computer charging stations, printers, copiers, vending machines, and soda machines, okay? It simply saves energy. The project financials, as you had in the executive summary that I gave you, was about $3,693,073. First year energy savings. Right now, this money is just going to the utilities, and you have nothing to show for it. You're going to get $198,000 in energy savings the first year that you'll be able to use to pay for this project. Over the 5 years, that's $5.3 million that you'll save. We've been able to get $21,000 in rebates from Rocky Mountain Power. It's going to take about 10 months to build this project out from beginning to end. And we'll do measurement and verification. Board President, you asked me last time, were you going to come back and show us how you save the money? We are. For 3 years, we're going to come back and have engineered reports that show exactly where you saved it and how much you saved. Yes? Right. There is not. This is Rocky Mountain Power. It's all the schools. And this, as it was mentioned earlier tonight, Rocky Mountain Power has a 30% increase to the PUC right now, so this project's coming at a great time to do something before you get hit with that 30%, potential 30%. We don't know exactly what that's going to be. It's a proposal, so we'll see. The project cash flow, what's important is that it's neutral. As you can see each year by state statute, this project has to be self-funding. So the savings that you're receiving that's guaranteed by Johnson Controls, and we've agreed upon, have to be greater than what the annual payment or any expenditures that you have coming out. So this requires no additional payment from the district outside of what you're already spending on your utilities. Okay, so that's very important to know. When I first came and met with you, we talked about doing this in 20 years. We're able to do it in 19 years, so we should be able to shave a year off the term. And at the end of the 19 years, you're plus $351,000. Okay, so everything's paid for, no additional funding coming out of your budget to do this. It's all through what your utility budget's now, and you'll be $351,000 in the black. So that's all I have as far as a presentation. Any additional questions that I could ask right now? Answer.
I was asking Dave, back on this page,
Yes.
you had mentioned the 5-year savings, but in the packet it says 20-year savings, so.
That's a great, again, we were looking at a 20-year project, and I'm sorry some of the information got crossed up. The official cash flow is a 19-year cash flow. When you talk about the financing here after this resolution here, it's a 19-year term. We ran it at 20 years. If you're running at 20 years, you're plus about $700,000 instead of $351,000. So your official term is 19 years.
So if I understand it right, that over the 19 years, there's a savings of the 5.3 million, but we will be spending some of that in making the upgrades, so the net savings is 351,000.
That is correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And that's paying all the financing costs also. That's where the other money went besides the 351. That difference is paying for all the interest for financing the project. It's all self-contained.
And just so you guys know, if I'm here in 19 years, first of all, that won't happen. But if it is, my plan is not to have it extend that long. We are going to try our best to, as we get additional revenue and stuff like that, to pay this off sooner.
Well, and if we pass a bond and build some new schools, it'll all be better.
Well, this isn't going to affect either middle school or the two schools that we're talking about.
Yeah, so
We're
we
not touching
intentionally
those.
left off North Park, Lakeview, and the two middle schools in anticipation of this bond so that we did not put money into a building that we would no longer occupy in 3 or 4 years.
But when we build the new schools,
They will be a lot more efficient.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Verb. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, beautiful presentation.
So you guys have in front of you 2 recommendations. The first one is the recommendation, sorry, I need to get to that. Because I'm looking at the executive summary here. The first recommendation is for the energy savings performance contract, and that's just that the board move forward on the energy savings performance agreement with JCI and create a funding plan for the future tax exempt lease purchase. So that'd be your first motion, is just continue with that. That would require us to pay that $195,000. That could have been included in the financing, but I was not willing to include that because I did not want to pay interest on $195,000 for 19 years. So we're going to pay that out of our general fund. And then the second recommendation is for the financing, which is that equipment lease purchase. That would be that $3.4 million that we would be borrowing, but requiring no additional revenue from the school district to make those payments because of the utility savings. So those are the 2 recommendations that you have before you in regards to this energy efficiency audit. Any questions?
But we need to do those at 2 separate
Yeah,
motions,
because one is for the
right?
contract and the other one is for
Okay.
the financing.
Okay, so do we have a motion for the first one?
I'll move that the board authorize the execution and delivery of an equipment lease purchase agreement and a performance contract to acquire, finance, and lease certain equipment and providing that first one.
Okay.
Yes, that we, the performance contract that, sorry, I did the wrong one first. The board accept the guaranteed energy savings performance agreement with JCI and create a funding plan for a future tax exempt lease purchase agreement for Box Elder School District.
I'll second it.
Okay, Julie Taylor has made the motion, Connie Archibald the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. So let's go on to the second one.
So I'll try and do what Julie was trying to do initially.
I messed
Okay.
up. Just
I
saying.
move that the board will authorize the execution and delivery of an equipment lease purchase agreement and a performance contract for certain equipment and related matters.
Okay, Nancy Kennedy has made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Tiffany Summers has made the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are good. So now we go on to E4, approval of sex education curriculum materials review committee. And that is Keith Meekum, our Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Teaching and Learning.
So in the school district, we are required to have a committee made up of parents, educators. It is. Oh, sorry about that. For the first time in my life, I actually did it, so. Anyway, so I've been given this opportunity to kind of oversee this committee. Last year, it came upon me so quickly that we just kind of did a carryover from what Mr. Allen had. I remember Karen saying, some of these parents look like they're also employees, and I appreciate that insight. So I want you to know that we have 7 new people on the committee. 5 are parents that were not on the committee last year. We've taken off employees, Anyway, the point is I'm really excited about the committee. I reached out to administrators at both ends and was able to get some feedback of individuals that they felt like would just be a good representation of their communities, and so we have them on here. So remember, we'll meet early in September, but the goal of this is when curriculum comes up that involves sex education type content, that we'll meet, we'll hear what's happening, we'll look at our policy to make sure it's appropriate. If something needs to come to the board for approval, then we would make a recommendation. Last year, as you recall, we did a maturation in 5th grade and a couple other things that we considered that didn't require the board to take action on because it was supplementary material. But we listen to all those types of things, and we meet kind of on an as-needed basis. So right now, we have one meeting for sure, and then as things kind of come up, we will certainly keep you in the loop. So my recommendation today, or tonight, is to have you approve this new 24-25. And we've always said sex education curriculum, and we just stopped there. But it really is Curriculum Materials Review Committee. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the following members to serve on the 2024-2025 BESD Sex Education Curriculum Materials Review Committee per the guidelines of District Policy 4105.
I'll second.
Okay, Danielle Wright has made the motion and Brian Smith the second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it passes. Now we go on to our information items, and Jeff Morris, our new assessment director, is here to do our AP results. So come on up. Thank you.
I'm excited to be here tonight and be able to talk a little bit about our AP scores. We've got some amazing results here so far. If we could go to the next slide here. If we look at just our numbers of students that are participating in AP, number of students that took the test and number of tests are both up. The number of students are up about 10% from where they were last year. And if you look all the way back to 2020, we're up from 328 to 489 number of students taking an AP test. So over the last 5 years, that number has increased dramatically. We're at the point right now where if you just compare that number of 489 to our number of students at the two high schools, that's 17.6%. Then if you take out the kids who really aren't eligible, because in 10th grade, we don't have as many students eligible as we do in 11th and 12th. That percentage is significantly higher. So out of the whole population, 17% are taking the AP tests. That's wonderful news. We're doing some great things, and that's with 581 tests taken. So there's a chunk of students taking multiple tests as well.
So Jeff,
yes.
I've noticed that a lot of these numbers are our DLI kids that are getting there, and I think that's a nice boost.
Yes, DLI is boosting it, and we'll see some numbers by test here in a moment. But those are some of the big boosts. As we look here, over the last several years, we've gone from 60 and 59% to 70 and 67% the last couple years. That's our passing rate. So we've increased the number of students taking the test, and we've increased the number of students passing these tests as well. So just we're 18 different tests that were given in Box Elder School District this last year. Some of them had 3 tests given, others had a significant number, right? 20, 24. Out of those 18 tests, if we compare them to the national results on those individual tests, 10 of those we were above the national average. On those other 8, other than maybe 1 or 2, we were right there within a % or 2 of the national average. So we're doing as well as or better than the national average on these tests. But you can see the % of students that passed each of those with highs in our arts, with 3 in each of those 2 tests, and in drawing as well. And then we've got some others. We're in that 50 to 60% range with just about everything. So with the other 8 on the next slide, we've got our English being one of our biggest, right? And in our English class, which really was one of the biggest there, 75%, 102 students scored a 3 or higher on that test between our two schools, right? And then if you look down, you mentioned our DLI classes. In our Spanish language and culture class, 62 students passed that with a 3 or higher, which came out to 66%, right? So, and then another great result was that world history, the modern world history class with 80%, U.S. government 88%. So some really high numbers with many of those tests. As I looked at what was presented last year, we also did present by ethnicity. And this result right here, we've got students from each of the ethnicities in our school district participating and passing these tests at high rates. We look at our American Indian. There were 3 tests given there, and 100% of them passed. Black and African American students, both of those students that took those tests passed as well. And we're getting really good results there also. Yeah, this is just a bar graph of the same information that was on that last one. I wanted us to have the number of students along with the percents. So that, and then there were 56, well, there were a number of students that didn't respond on their ethnicity as well, right? So that's the presentation I have. I just wanted to celebrate the great things happening in our AP testing, where I just got those results, and I appreciate your time today.
Okay, do we have any questions for Jeff? We all good?
I do have one question.
okay. Brian?
With these great news, are we having to turn anybody away? Are we at risk of not being able to provide, since there's so many students wanting to take AP? How are we doing there as far as being able to offer to anybody that wants to take it?
I would imagine Mr. Meekum could answer that better than me.
The answer is we've been able to accommodate. There are a couple of, for example, AP Chemistry is kind of on every other year, so there's an opportunity to take it, because Chemistry is a junior level class. So if they don't get the AP their junior year, they can take it their senior year. But during the course of their high school career, we haven't turned anybody away.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, and congratulations on your new assignment. We're excited to have you in your new position this year in the district. Thank you. Okay, we will go to our next transportation routing software, cutting fuel costs and field trip issues. Jason,
Thanks.
welcome, welcome.
Members. And Keith, thanks for pulling that up. So I just want to thank you and for your support and all. Transportation's kind of this unique place where the buses just magically appear, and there is a great deal of work that takes place, and I have great staff, and I just want to give a shout out to them, because truly there is a great amount of work, and you'll see this in the numbers as this is presented. So some key numbers I just wanted to review. So for 23-24, we did a total with our buses of 1,726,789.1 miles, and that was for that year. That's up from the previous year, and the previous year was 1,527,390, so nearly 200,000, and that is in part because of our dual run, and so that has increased those miles. But it's also decreased the number of students and the crowding on our buses, just as we talked about crowding in the schools. It's dramatically reduced the behavior concerns that we are having on the buses. Just before you go, sorry, Keith. And then so total miles driven by a bus is eligible. So what is eligible miles versus not eligible? Eligible miles are miles that are driven getting students to and from school. So if it's a field trip, if it's an athletic event, that's not eligible. So the state does not reimburse us for those. So that 1.556709 or 1 million, those are reimbursed by the state. And then underneath there, it's 85% of that cost is reimbursed by the state, and then 50% by LEA funds. If it's not reimbursed, that's 100% LEA funds. So
Are we getting that 85%? I remember a couple of years ago, the state wasn't quite up there.
Ye-
Are they there now?
Yes and no, Superintendent, I don't know if you
Well,
want to jump in.
it says in the statute up to 85%,
Yeah.
so that's always the question of whether or not they, I guess it probably is determined by the total amount of money in the state, and then they have to.
Right, and then they look at what the district's requesting, but
So my question was, is that what we're receiving? I know it's up to,
Yeah,
but what are we receiving?
probably not.
We'll have to find.
It's about 72%.
With doing the dual run, that helps us get a little closer, and I do have a number for you there, so. Now, yeah, go ahead. So, in a given day, our buses will travel 9,811 miles, and that's just in a given day that our combined buses. For the year.
That's your standard to and from school route. That
To and
doesn't
from
include
school
any
and,
activities or
and
field
our,
trips.
our extra trips.
Oh, it
So-
does?
So that's all total, if you look at the total miles and then the days, that's what that equates to. We had 194 elementary field trips. In 2023, there was 168, so we're actually up this last year in the number of field trips. We had 12,632 elementary students who traveled on a bus. Now, there might be a repeat student, but that's the total number of elementary students traveling on a bus for a field trip. We had 671 athletic trips, and that's actually down from the year previous. For whatever reason, I was kind of thought, with the weather we had the year before spring, but it actually is. And it might just be based on schedules, there's for varieties of reasons, but 20,940 student athletes traveled on a school bus this last year. And then this is a map just representing what that would, so just 9,000 miles, we could leave Seattle, go across to the top of Maine, then down to the bottom of Florida, then across the southern tier, and then back up, and that would be 9,000 miles. So again, we're doing 9,800, so on a daily basis. So that's just visually what we're doing.
Mr. Sparks?
Yes.
So I've been a PTA mom riding on the bus on the field trips, and I was stunned on 4th grade, we were going to the county fair, or the state fair rather. How many kids in that 4th grade had not been past Ogden?
Yeah.
And when people say, oh, field trips, they're just a blow-off day, it's giving so many of our kids an opportunity to see things they don't see otherwise.
Right.
And just as I kind of talk to the kids around me, it's like, you've really never been beyond. And this gives them a view of the world that they need to see, they need to be a part of.
Yep. And with those field trips and with those athletic events, some districts and boards have said we don't want to support that because that's a cost out of the LEA. And so they have pulled that back. I'm glad that our district is supportive and wants those students to have those experiences. And so they're actually saying you're going to have to charter, and so they require them to do charter buses, and it's a lot more expensive. Also, our minutes, because we also report miles and minutes. So our minutes are up. We had 5,352, 920 to and from school minutes. So those are those reimbursable minutes. That's up 16.37%. And again, that increase is due to double runs. 454,017 activity and field trip minutes. Again, that's up. That's down 0.18, but that's really because of that secondary. But our elementary field trips was up 6.5%. And then our instructional minutes with our drivers and our paras, so that's behind the wheel, safety meetings, that's up 5.54%. When we created the head trainer and we really made an emphasis on the training, we're up nearly 30% with that training. So some other key numbers. Ron Litchfield gave me a call and says, just so you know, you're the most efficient district in the state. I don't know if that's good or bad, but we're the most efficient by 25 cents per mile. So compared to the next district, we are the most efficient. So we do a lot of miles, and we're very efficient at doing that. So if you just took that and just ran some numbers, you know, with the miles we do that are reimbursed, for the LEA, that's $58,376 savings just by our efficiency. And our double run recovery, as was asked, you know, by us doing the double run, he indicated to me that it would be close to 400,000, so that would help us get closer. And then I want to talk about fuel tank savings, but I just have up there, you know, 96,398, but I'll kind of dive into that here in just a minute. So given those savings, that's over $500,000 in savings. There's a picture of our tank, so we have that up in Tremont at the facility there. And I'm excited about this tank for a variety of reasons. And one is the savings, but also it enables us to control the fuel that we're putting in our bus, and I'm going to talk about that as well. So for Tremont, for the year, we use 98,365 gallons of diesel. And with that, that's $342,310 just in diesel. Our average cost, and this is, again, this is for what we pay for diesel, the average cost for the year, and this, we don't pay tax. This was just our average cost was $3.48. We have, and I want to thank Dave for his help. We've been meeting with some vendors, looking at, we've met with several vendors, and one in particular that's on the state bid. And what they're bidding at or telling us, as of the, August 8th, that price would be $2.56 delivered to us. So that's quite a bit of savings. That equates 92 cents roughly. You know, if we were filling our tank right now compared to what we've been paying, that's 92 cents.
So what, Mr. Sparks,
Yeah.
what you're saying is buying it at Maverick or at the, you know, Flying J or wherever bus drivers buy it versus filling up out there.
Right,
Is that- okay.
right. So we have a fuel card, and they can fill up wherever those fuel cards are accepted. We don't pay the tax, but we're not getting the savings that we would by buying direct. And so with that, also, we can control the fact that we're going to put the treatment into the diesel fuel, because you want to treat the diesel fuel not only for gelling, but for lubrication. And we do the little bottles, so the drivers take the bottle, they fill the tank up, and then fill their fuel up. That costs us 10 cents per gallon for that treatment. By us buying the fuel and them treating it for us, that's going to be 4 cents per gallon. So again, that's a 6 cents savings. So we're nearly at almost $1. So that's where I get the 98 cents savings. Yes.
But this has just barely happened.
Yeah, I am.
This is brand new.
This is new. The tank's going to be there. We're moving forward, and this is going to be a savings that we will have. So projected savings for Tremont would be $96,398. And so that's that 98 cents per gallon. And that's a 28% reduction in our diesel fuel expenditures just for Tremont. Now, we're not putting a tank in Brigham yet. Tremont, we use about 60% versus 40% of the diesel fuel, but we wanted to try. I want to see, is this truly going to be here? And then Dave and I have talked, and we really want to put a tank in for Brigham as well and have that savings. The next slide, thanks. Keith. Any questions? Sorry.
Well, I have a
Yeah.
question. So we got this tank.
Mm-hmm.
Did we pay for that tank, or did?
Yes.
How much did we pay?
So based off our savings, we'll have that tank and all the construction efforts in that paid off in a year and a half. And from that point forward, it'll be $100,000 savings every year going forward.
That we could put towards the next tank and.
It'll be an ongoing savings.
Yeah. And as fuel prices go up and we can control that difference, that makes a difference. Another key thing, and this doesn't show up well on there, but hopefully you can see this. Not all refineries produce the same quality of product. And so where you get your fuel matters. And in particular, the Hawley Frontier refinery and the Sinclair refinery are dramatically better, I would say, in a variety of reasons. This just tells you why they're better as far as when diesel would gel or when it would freeze up. The lower number. So the red line is if you do a 70-30 mix, and so that is your regular diesel with number 1 diesel, which is basically almost kerosene. You do that mix, and that helps you with not gelling up. But if you look at the Holly Frontier Woods Cross, before you even treat it, the blue line is just your regular diesel. It is not going to gel until you get to, is it minus 20? Yeah, minus 20. Then if you treat it, it bounces down to minus 25. But if you look at Silver Eagle, you treat it, nothing happens, and it also is going to freeze at 0. So you put treatment in, it doesn't even affect it not freezing because of the amount of wax in the fuel. And it also causes problems with your filters and all of that. And so the Sinclair also, it has a better rating. And so we're looking at one of those 2 refineries, depending on price, but also that enables us to run buses at a much lower temperature with 1 treatment, which is really almost minus 50 in that one example. And so we wondered, why are one bus going by another bus and this bus is gelling and this bus isn't? And really it's where that fuel's coming from.
So how many hours of education have you had, Jason?
How
Because you're
many-
a school teacher, a principal, administrator by trade,
yeah.
by profession.
Yes.
And now you're
I
extraordinary
have been
transportation
absorbing
director.
a lot. I've been absorbing a lot and a lot of great people. And this is my 30th year in education. I taught for 6 years, and I've been in administration for 23 years. Not a superintendent, but in administration for 23 years. But this has been a learning curve. This is my start of my 4th year, but it has been a huge learning curve for me, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it too. And looking how we can better serve the students of our community. Which brings me to field trips. We struggled with the field trips, and so I have a plan. And I know one of the thoughts was, we guarantee getting students to and from school, and that's important. We seem to guarantee getting students to the athletic events. We need to guarantee the students have an opportunity to go on field trips. And so I've been working with our elementary principals, with Heidi Joe, and I want to thank her for her efforts, and looking at and reflecting, and I value students having those opportunities, just as Nancy mentioned. And so we've got a plan in place. One of the things we're going to do, and this is a commitment, this creates a commitment for us as a district, we're going to guarantee 2 buses on both ends that can take students on field trips and return when their school ends. So they're not being pushed to get back, okay? So we're gonna have those buses. That's gonna be from now until April 1st, okay? And that's every day but Friday. Friday's early out, 2-hour early out. It's just not feasible for us to have field trips on Friday. We're going to share, we've shared a calendar already out to the secretaries and the principals, and we're actually getting them to actually schedule field trips in September. I'm excited. Because the idea is, let's spread those field trips out. There was one particular day we had 34 field trips, elementary field trips in one day. I just don't have the resources for that. But if we can spread it out, we can manage this and we can support them.
Was that in May?
That was in May, yeah. And it was a scary day when I got that many buses out and they're all over, and are they going to get back in time? And we got to pick kids up. But we'll have that. We have that calendar shared. They can see what's been scheduled. They can hopefully pick multiple days, and then when they put that request in, we'll do it first comes, first serve, 2 buses on both ends, and then they have that opportunity. So it creates a lot of opportunity for field trips. We're also want to incentivize. We know that there's been a tradition that the spring is when we go on our field trips in elementaries, and so I want to give an incentive to change, because when you change culture, you change practice, there has to be motivation. So we're going to give them a discount, 10% discount in field trips that occur before April 1st. So if they'll book it and go before April 1st, they get a 10% discount. Also, we won't have them due until April 1st. So I know a lot of schools, they're raising funds, they're looking for grants, and so that's why they tend to do it in the spring. We'll let them do it in September, and they have until April for that to be due.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I think you're kind of alluding to this. The board heard from a couple of parents about they traveled a couple hours and only stayed there for a half hour and came back. So some of these things you're describing are going to help with that and help educate, and you're going to communicate to the teachers a little better on, if you go on this time, you're not going to have much time to.
Right.
to
Unless
spend on your
unless
field
you
trip.
are able, schedule one of these buses, and then you're going to have more time. And, some things you can do locally, some things you can't, and there needs to be those opportunities. But yes, that's a response to that. I also worked with Heidi Joe West and the elementary principals looking at revising the field trip policy. And one of the things is we wanted to make sure that the elementaries, they schedule their field trips so they leave when school starts and they're back before school ends, because it gets to be really problematic trying to get elementary kids home and parents having to come get them if the buses have already left for the day. All right. Any questions on the field trips?
Can I tag on to that?
Yeah.
That's into response that it's become more common for PTA parents or volunteers to request having field trips go till 6 or 10 p.m. at night down to Lagoon, and we just don't feel like that's appropriate for students in those grade levels.
Any other questions so far? Thank you.
Fantastic.
The last thing I want to present is we have an upgraded routing program. What I'm really excited is, number one, schools are going to have more information. Our secretaries, principals, district staff are going to have information at their fingertips. They're going to be able to, in a school, they can pull up any given student that goes to that school. They can look at the route for that student, where it is, where the stops are, the exact times of those stops, how long those students are going to be on the bus, and where, based on, and if it changes, it's going to be real time, so they can see that. Our sub-drivers, we're going to have a device that they'll have on the bus. It'll be hands-free, but it'll give them turn-by-turn directions. It will tell them where the stops are, and it'll tell them who the students are with a picture of the students that are getting on the bus. And so that's really critical, I think, information, and I want to celebrate that as well. That also will better help us analyze routes real time, especially with our special needs routes. It will look at flows of traffic, and it'll give us suggestions, and we can revise those, and we can change routes based on what's happening in real time, and also create better efficiencies with that. And that's where we're at. I promised Marcy, my route coordinator, she wouldn't have much work this summer like she had last summer with her double routes. She spent an enormous amount of time, and she was going to come tonight, but she was still working on these routes. So I just want to give a big shout out to her, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Could I ask a
Appreciate
question
that.
of you, Jason? Obviously, those of us that live on the north end realize that we have 1,000 north that is currently in repair. And, I've had some comment for some parents, and I always like to try to put fires out, right?
Thank you.
Always try to put fires out, because the school district is smart, and they're doing the best that they can in every situation. I know that you've gone the second mile. Would you just address what you've done to quiet moms and dads? As we, it's a crystal ball at this point a little bit. We don't know for sure when that road's going to be completely completed. But we know that we're trying. And you have done, I've heard that you've done some amazing things with trying to talk through this so that we can have, moms and dads can sleep at night, and they know that, we have someone wonderful at the helm like yourself.
For those that don't know, Radio Hill,
Yes, Radio Hill.
it's kind of an interesting dynamic. And there's, the city's doing construction, and then the states come in and said, well, we're gonna knock this bridge down.
Yep.
Well, if the city's a pinch point, you can't get out if the bridge is gone. And people are like, what's gonna happen? And so we were looking at that. I've been working with the Tremont road crew, the road department. I've met with them, and they got the state to hold off on the bridge until theirs is done. They really think they're going to be done before school starts. We'll see. We have plans in place given what they have. They've also told us we will make sure your buses can get in and out. So it's been part of that process. And then calling parents and talking with parents. So.
And that second mile effort.
What's that?
Add that Jason also has done something similar out in Fielding. There's a bridge that's been washed out that's impacting the bus stops out there, and he's worked with
The county.
the county.
Yeah, and so we've been assured that it will be done by November 4th. This involves students having to walk. I don't know if you know, the bridge was not there. And we can't take a bus into that neighborhood because by rule, we can't go in if there's not an out. We can't back these big buses. We shouldn't be backing these big buses, and so, but the bridge is supposed to be done by November 4th. Hopefully it's sooner. They think it may, but again, those are things that we're always just trying to work together. It's a community effort.
Well, thank you for being a part of the solution.
Well, thank you. Any other
Thank you.
questions?
I
Thank you.
just wanted to say thank you to you and Heidi Jo and all that's been working on the elementary field trips. I appreciate that, and I know that those are important in learning experiences.
And like I said, we've already had six field trips booked in September in the elementary, so it tells me the plan's working.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Jason. Thank you. Okay, our monthly financial report, Dave Roberts.
Yeah, so we haven't spent a lot of money so far, but I'm not making any promises for the future. How's that? Just a couple line items that I just wanted to show. I didn't highlight them because they weren't huge, but just give you a heads up on a couple things that's happening. I think it's line 72, the telephone. Normally when you see a negative amount, it's because we've reimbursed parents or an employee for costs that they were charged that they shouldn't have been charged. For example, refund on lunch accounts. That's why you'll see negatives in the child nutrition program this time of year, and those kind of things. But that one for 2,140, we just got done with an audit, and thanks to Robert's IT department help, we had Jared and a couple individuals that really went through the telephone lines. And we've actually are going to incur about a $7,000 a month savings in our telephone lines that we shut down that were no longer in use. And Jared spent a lot of time in that research and working with Spyglass and getting that done. So we should have an ongoing savings there of about $70,000 a year just in telephone lines. And that doesn't include our mobile lines and a couple other things that we're doing savings on. But that's one that regularly do you see a negative on because we usually pay for what we use, and so that's not going to happen a lot. But that is one item that is a negative that is normally not going to show as a negative. Also, too, as I was talking to Wade and Connie in our board agenda preview, didn't feel like there was a lot of time for any training this month, but they did feel it was worth explaining the your property tax. I don't know what you call that. It's not an invoice, but whatever it is. Assessment, is that what it is? Anyway, most of you guys saw your valuation of your homes go down and also saw your property tax go down, which doesn't make a lot of sense because if the revenue stays the same, if your property tax goes down, I mean your house value goes down, your property tax should go up to make up for the multiplier in the fact that your valuation is no longer at what it used to be. I spent an hour or so with the assessor's office, and basically they explained to me that what has been the biggest change is in the property tax, and why that has decreased is because more of the burden is now shifted over to commercial property. They have not been assessing commercial property as often as they should. In fact, they did tell me that the last time they assessed a commercial property was 18 years ago, and most of the commercial property hasn't been assessed for 20 years in our county. They are now going to be doing that every 5 years like they do with residential homes. So that burden, a lot of that burden shifted over to commercial property because the value of commercial property is now up. Therefore, it reduces the amount that residential homeowners have to pay. The reason the value of the homes went down is they do an assessment valuation once a year in January. Based off of the value of the homes and what they sold for, the value of the homes went down based off of that report that they generate once a year. So that's why the value of the homes went down and the property tax went down. Usually those two do not correlate and happen to go the same direction, and so that's why. Any other questions with regards to monthly financials? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Thank you. Do we have any board committee reports this month?
I just want, President Hyde, I would like to mention that in front of each board member and the superintendent and the business administrator, you have serving on the USBA Board of Directors. I attended a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to announce and make sure that board members are aware and citizens that we are inviting the legislators into the schools September 23rd through the 27th. We'd like them to stay a couple of hours and even teach if they would like. So this is just your information, and a member of the Board of Directors put this together, and it's really, really cute. Also, there will be a new board member institute, and this is for anybody that would like to. So I've given you a copy of what will take place on December 7th. And then also in your packet is the USBA Fall Regional Meeting Schedule. And you can see there that we are meeting, our school district is meeting on September 26th, if you can, at 6 o'clock at Maddox. And this will be Cache, Logan, and Box Elder. However, you can go to any one of those listed. And so I made a copy for all of you so that you can kind of schedule that. But I'm having a wonderful time on the Board of Directors, and so I hope to keep you informed.
Thank you, Connie. We appreciate that. Thanks so much. Okay, we'll go to our policy review, and there's no action required, and I'll have the superintendent explain why that is.
Okay. Each year in negotiations, we talk a lot about different policies and procedures, and we made some changes this year in some of the policies during negotiations, and then the Board of Education passed the negotiations agreement. And so you've already approved that, and so in state code, negotiated agreement that has been signed by both the association and the board would trump a policy. So therefore, we have to make sure our policies are equal to what our negotiated agreement is. So as you look through any of those negotiated agreements, those policies, you'll see that they're in line with whatever we changed. And they're agreed upon by both parties, the district and either our BESPA group or our Teachers Association, and even there was some work with the administrators as well this year.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate that. Are there any questions on our consent items?
Make a motion, we pass the,
I did have one. On the July minutes, it did not have Brian in attendance, but it had him doing a variety of motions. So either he was doing it as a ghost, but in the initial, when it listed who was there, Brian was not there.
Okay.
And then in the next month, he was just referred to as Brian, which we all know who you are, but the rest of us had a last name there.
we need
So.
a last name.
Okay.
Good catch.
But you were making lovely motions for not having been there,
Okay.
so it was.
Good catches, Nancy. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Dave, do you have those?
Yep, I got them down. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions about consent items? Okay.
I
Karen?
was just gonna make a motion, we approve the consent items.
Okay. Karen Cronin made the motion, and Julie Taylor the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. So any suggestions for future board meetings?
I just wanted to follow up with something that, is it Jericho? he talked about at the beginning of the meeting. I've heard some comments from parents about this, the same concerns about the dress policy. I don't know if we want to talk about that at one of our meetings, just where things are at.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. I'd support that.
Sure.
Okay.
It's just for everybody to look it up. It's policy 5200. So Keith looked that up for me, and just you can
So-
check that dress code, and then we can talk about it in future.
I was going to say, can we talk about it as a board in a future meeting?
Absolutely.
Maybe invite some administrators to give their opinion on challenges of, or teachers of, if they feel they can say something or if they can't.
And I think even
If
a
they're
board member
at
will have a
risk
new board
themselves
member.
of, I have heard from some male teachers that they don't feel, they don't want to risk their job or a lawsuit or accusations by pointing out to a female student that she's dressed inappropriately. I don't know how we get around that.
Easy thing is just show them the policy. I just read it for Box Elder. You gotta have this portion covered. That's simple.
And I would say we don't want to just focus on the girls. We need to look at both situations, not.
I think that's where you'll find the biggest dilemma is dress code policies are like 95% pointed towards females, and it makes it quite concerning, to say the least. Yeah.
I might add, I mean, you can look at it, it's a very small policy at a district level. Obviously, well, this is what you want to do, but you're going to see A is about parents' responsibility. C is the principal, along with parents, setting forth a dress code. And then.
So then, does that mean each individual school has their own individual dress policy?
Correct.
And that would be posted
On their website.
on their website, and
And in their handbooks. And they have those.
then I guess, because I've heard from teachers saying that they know things are not within policy, but they don't feel like they have the teeth to deal with it. So that's probably maybe where I'm.
So here's where I think, and this can lead to a discussion, and we can talk about this, but if you look on or section B, that first line, extremes of dress, grooming, and appearance which tend to detract from the learning environment. Every dress code is all about distracting or detracting from the learning environment. And that question, I remember being at Box Elder, there used to be no facial hair. If a young man in 1993 had a beard or a mustache, it was not allowed. The question was, is that detracting from the ability to teach and for students to learn? Hats, is that detracting from the ability to teach and for students to learn? What kids are wearing, is that detracting from the learning environment? So when you look at the legality, you're going to have to look at, is it detracting from the learning environment? And that is probably as varied as everybody in this room. What would be detracting? Also, what you see in the hallway, which your teachers may or may not, that might, there's no detracting in a hallway. They come in, they sit down, they don't get to see the bare belly necessarily when they're sitting down behind a desk. I'm not justifying, I'm just telling you some of the complexities of this. So I agree with Karen, if you want to do that, we can bring this together.
Right, because district policy says we need to have it on the agenda to discuss it.
Yep.
So I suggest that we put it on, we could do it next month even.
Yeah.
We could do it next month and discuss it.
I
And
can
we could
organize that how
look at the
you'd
policy
like.
at that
Thank you.
time. And you know, it wouldn't hurt to have a principal or two come in and explain themselves and explain what works and what doesn't. Anything like that, so, okay. So we'll put that on next month's agenda. Is that okay, Karen? We good with that? Okay. And sir, you could come back next month. Lucky you, huh? Okay? Okay. Okay, we will do that for next month. Board handbook's fine, nothing's changed there. We are going to go into a closed session now, and we have 2 items, but I believe, talking to the superintendent, we can put both of those items into one closed session. Okay, motion, right, motion.
I have one question. When
Okay.
does our student board members start?
Next month.
Next month.
Next
Okay,
month.
September, yeah.
Okay.
From Bear River.
So, and that would be good to have them a part of the group too, if we're talking dress code, so that's a good idea.
You ready for the motion now?
Yes, we are,
I
ready.
move that we go into closed session to discuss sale or lease of real property and discussion of personnel.
Okay, Brian Smith has made the motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Nancy Kennedy the second, we'll do a roll call, starting with Nancy. Wade Hyde, yes.
Connie Archibald, yes.
Tiffany Summers, yes.
Danielle Wright, yes.
Karen Cronin, yes.
Okay, motion passes, so we will go into closed session now, and thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a wonderful night and be safe going home.